Welcome to the SoccerWire podcast, the weekly news show that focuses on youth soccer and player development in the good old US of A. I'm Mark Serber, and today we'll get into this week's top news. I'll ask Charles Boehm what happened to the U17 men's national team as they were dominated by Senegal in their opening match of the U17 World Cup. We'll have our weekly review of the top youth soccer headlines, latest college recruiting news, and more. It's the day before Halloween 2019, and the SoccerWire podcast starts now. We start this week the same way we start every week, with a visit from SoccerWire managing editor Quinn Casteel. Quinn, what stories are keeping you busy?
Well, Mark, first of all, Serginho Dest committed to play for the U.S. men's national team.
Yes.
Yeah, huge win for the U.S. The news last week was that U.S. head coach Greg Berhalter and GM Ernie Stewart went out and visited Serginho Dest in Amsterdam, where he plays with Ajax, and had a long lunch meeting. It sounds like it went a couple of hours, and the way it's being reported is that meeting went a long way in getting him to commit to the U.S. over the Netherlands, and that's just a massive win. He turns 19 years old next week, and he's easily one of the top prospects as a defender in the U.S. program.
And it almost felt like in the soccer sphere, Quinn, that it was a foregone conclusion he was going to pick the Dutch. I mean, come on, why wouldn't you? Especially at a time when everything seems to be going wrong for U.S. soccer. This is a really timely win for Greg Berhalter, Ernie Stewart, and the Federation. And speaking of wins for the Federation, there was some well-received news on the women's side as well.
Yeah, obviously the cat was out of the bag last week, but it's official now. Vlatko Andonovski is the new head coach for the U.S. women's national team. He's the 9th head coach in the program's history, taking over the back-to-back World Cup champions. And he was introduced Monday at a press conference in New York City. And, it's been very well received. It seems like the players obviously had a lot to do with getting him hired, as women's national team general manager Kate Markgraf explained at yesterday's press conference. And to me, the media seems to be really on board, and I haven't really heard a negative word about it, which is, to me, is a little interesting because Jill Ellis had so many haters right off the bat, and for the longest time, they were writing her. It seemed like a lot of people in the media were writing Jill Ellis's obituary before she even got a chance to coach in a World Cup. And with Vlatko, we're seeing 100% unanimous positive reaction. That doesn't make me nervous per se, but I just think it's interesting that everybody is 100% on board.
Well, I mean, for now, let's just enjoy the honeymoon period. But the bottom line is he will be judged by the results. So we'll see how things stack up when they actually step on the field. Speaking of everything seeming to be in good shape and then having things change when they stepped on the field, the U.S. U17 men's national team didn't really cover themselves in glory in the opening match of the U17 World Cup.
No, it was utterly embarrassing that, the U.S. U17s came out and lost 4-1 to Senegal in their opening Group D match at the World Cup. Hopefully they're going to be able to bounce back against Japan tonight. Japan's going to be a very tough opponent, though. Their backs are totally up against the wall now. And the game against Senegal, the U.S. was able to take the lead in the 3rd minute, and things were looking great. But then in stoppage time of the first half, Senegal answered, made it 1-1. And then from there, three more unanswered goals in the second half, and things just totally fell apart. Hopefully the U.S. has an answer Wednesday night against Japan.
And that is something that Charles and I are going to address in our next segment. But like I said, so much high hopes for this squad. It just seems like every team on the boys' side, Quinn, from the senior team down, is playing with this burden of expectations from a rightly so very frustrated fan base. And the U.S. will be back in action tonight at 7:50 p.m. Eastern on FS2, and we'll see how they respond. They're going up against a Japan side, though, that beat Holland 3-0. So like you said, backs against the wall. This is going to be a very tough game. Well, looking forward, though, what else is on tap this week?
Well, Mark, over the weekend, the North Carolina Courage captured their second straight National Women's Soccer League championship. They beat the Chicago Red Stars 4-0 in a home game for the Courage in North Carolina. The Courage are now the first team to go back-to-back for the NWSL championship, and they've won 3 straight Shield titles, winning with the best regular season record 3 years in a row.
Hashtag dynasty.
Absolutely. It's a dynasty with under head coach Paul Riley. A great program they have there in North Carolina. Also, over in the MLS, last night the Seattle Sounders punched their ticket to the MLS Cup. They went into Los Angeles and beat LAFC on the road 3-1 Tuesday night. They will await the winner of Wednesday night's Eastern Conference Championship between Atlanta United FC and Toronto FC. Also, on the college side, we had new rankings coming out this week with, on the men's side, University of Washington remains number 1, and they're 14-1-0 on the season. Clemson coming in at number 2, Georgetown number 3, UVA is number 4, and Stanford stays in the number 5 spot in the men's rankings. On the women's side, University of Virginia still holding down the number 1 spot. They're still undefeated with 14 wins and only 3 ties, no losses. Rounding out the top 5 on the women's side is Stanford, North Carolina, BYU, and Florida State. That top 5 on the women's side is the exact same as last week.
And I'm just going to make a pitch here because it's so shocking to me that Navy on both the men's and women's side, each team only has 2 losses on the season, and yet neither of them are in the top 25. So a little local love for Navy, who I've seen both of them play, and they're excellent this season. So that, ladies and gentlemen, was Quinn Casteel. He's the reason SoccerWire.com is always fresh and up to date. To read those stories and more, be sure to check out SoccerWire.com. We're going to hear a quick word from our sponsor, Player Maker. And when we return, Charles Boehm will join me to discuss the U.S. U17's limp performance in their U17 World Cup opener. The SoccerWire podcast is brought to you by Player Maker, the lightweight device worn by soccer players on each foot to record every touch of the ball and every step. Within minutes of training or games, players and coaches get a report on every touch, including left and right foot usage, possessions, passing, and dozens more. Player Maker is the most holistic player performance approach that's never been seen before. Visit SoccerWire.com/PlayerMaker to schedule a demo. Welcome back to the SoccerWire podcast, your one-stop shop for weekly news headlines and in-depth discussion on the biggest issues facing the youth game today. I'm joined now by Charles Boehm via Skype because Charles isn't really feeling that well, but Charles, you are a warrior for staying on with us.
Well, I'm just glad this is an audio-only podcast and not video because I look like death warmed over.
Well, just in time for Halloween. But
Yes.
Charles, of course, is a regular SoccerWire contributor and an editor at MLSsoccer.com. And Sea Monster, this was a U.S. team we had high hopes for, yet the U-17s were dominated by Senegal in their opening match.
Yeah, it's a cold awakening for the U17s. I think in general, we all knew this is a tough group. And even though Senegal kind of backed in, they qualified for this tournament by virtue of a disqualification. So there's still there's a little bit of an unknown quality to them, but they showed the best of what Senegalese and other West African senior teams have showed, with a lot of individual quality on the ball, a lot of athleticism, dynamism, and we've talked a lot about U.S. teams trying to go away from direct play and build out of the back and do things in a more sophisticated manner. Even as you commit to doing that with the ball, that doesn't excuse you from defending direct play against the ball. And the U.S. won the possession battle, I believe. created some decent chances, scored a great goal to start the match. But they were highly susceptible to direct play, whether it was, the game-winning goal was scored by a goalkeeper's boot after a U.S. free kick. I just rewatched the game today, and I was struck at how easily they lost their shape in key moments and how much they really cratered down the stretch.
Yeah, a lot of the criticism that I read as well, Charles, was based on the number 6 position and feeling that we didn't really have enough bite in the midfield. Was that something that you saw yourself when watching and then rewatching this game?
Yeah, again, they played short in every goal kick, and it was great to see. It's great, they clearly had a plan. Raphael Wicki, the coach, clearly, was trying to emphasize playing out of the back, build up play. But often a bit of pressing. And Senegal didn't press throughout the 90 minutes, but they did so early, and they did so in some key moments where it put the U.S. defenders under pressure, forced them to go back a lot. There were a lot of they spent a lot of time in their own half, and the few occasions where they did play some incisive balls through the lines, good things happened. But the midfield trio of Daniel Leva, Jean-Luc Abusio, and Adam Saldana just got left out too often. The U.S. had to go long, look for big switches, find a way to play through the press. And I think I would have wanted to see a bit more from the midfield trio. Busio, beyond the goal, was active, worked hard, but Leva and Saldana went missing at times. And when you're trying to play that style and two players in the engine room don't have good days, it inevitably has a knock-on effect.
And as we're recording this later tonight, the USA takes on Japan, who beat the Netherlands 3-0. So all of a sudden, this is a make or break game. And once again, that loss on the opening day means that the match against Holland could now have real significance as well. How does the U.S. approach these final two matches?
Yeah, Japan were worthy winners 3-0 over the Netherlands in their first group stage match. And I think you'll have a different challenge here. The issue is, and I want to emphasize too that there was a little bit of harsh fate on the U.S. It wasn't necessarily a 4-1 loss in terms of the overall performance, but they didn't look fit enough. They didn't look as fit as the Senegalese, and they looked like they lost their focus. And they weren't clean with the ball really throughout the 90 minutes. There were too many occasions where passes weren't played to feet. There was a lack of sharpness. And a team like Japan will punish you in a different way than a team like Senegal will. In a lot of cases against Senegal, that led to quick breaks, quick transitions, and they looked naked in transition on a lot of occasions, did the U.S. Japan tended to take the ball, and I'm not sure if they'll press the U.S. or not, but regardless, if the ball turns, Japan are very technically adept, and they'll keep it for a long, long time, and they'll make you chase. So that's going to be a different sort of challenge, and I hope they're up for it because they'll get run ragged against Japan if they're not cleaner.
And Charles, I guess this is a question that's not only for these U17s, but for all levels. Look, I understand, especially now in a developmental phase, that you're trying to implement something, that you're trying to do it the right way and learn it for when it matters. The same argument is being made by Berhalter and his charges in terms of the U.S. men's senior side and what they're trying to do. But at what point, especially in a competition, do you say, forget this, we need a plan B and we need it now? I mean, the bottom line is there's more than one way to skin a cat. We've seen, obviously, the tiki-taka work, but we've also seen teams who are very direct or defend in a low block and then hit on the break, cover themselves in glory as well. So at what point do you say, okay, as much as we want plan A, it's not working, let's go to plan B?
Yeah, I don't think it's an A or B choice here. I think you need to be able to set up your team to win in different ways and to respond to different challenges and different circumstances. One of the things I was disappointed in the U.S. in a more subtle way was it seemed like even some of the more tactically astute players didn't have that instinct of what the game state required in a given moment. So, for example, there were times in the U.S., Senegal were not universally disciplined in their defensive shape, and there were times when the U.S. got numbers forward and had the ball in transition opportunities, and there was just a strange lack of urgency. Again, even a possession-oriented team can take advantage of those situations, right? With the instincts to sniff out an opportunity and really go for the throat in a key moment when you've got numbers up, when the opposition is backpedaling. And there were too many times when they valued possession in the wrong moment as opposed to valuing getting the lines forward in the wrong moment. So I think it's a question of instincts and soccer IQ. And again, we talked in the previous episode about how experienced this group is for a U17 squad, but it didn't show up in those key moments where they needed to understand what the game called for. So I'd like to see this team and other U.S. teams, I mean, most obviously the senior squad, be able to do more than one thing in a given match. You know, there's times for different approaches, and just because you sense an opportunity doesn't mean that you have to throw out your overarching plan.
And I guess this isn't a question just for the U.S., but for really all countries that are involved in this U17 World Cup, regardless of how the U.S. do, how should they be judged on this tournament? Because the bottom line is, you look at teams who've had success, whether it be the African teams have had a ton of success at the youth level at these World Cups, and we still haven't had an African team make it to the final of a World Cup. And then you look at teams like Portugal's golden generation with Rui Costa and Luis Figo. They won a U20 World Cup, but they never won anything at the senior level. And then you have teams like Spain who swept things at the senior level, the youth level, and then went ahead and did the same at the senior level. So based on the U.S.'s performance and then just where everybody finishes, how much can you really take away on the future of these countries and their programs based on where they finish in this World Cup?
Well, if you look at a group stage, maybe 3 games is a small sample size, but I think you can start to get a sense of the individual qualities of certain players, the tactical framework that they've been provided with, the leadership of the coach. In this case, for the U.S., I think the bottom line should be, how many of these players are able to move forward and contribute to the senior squad at some point in the future. Are they? And there's a lot of luck and circumstance that goes into that, and a lot of deserving players don't make it. It's a long and winding road, but the key, I think, is are you preparing quality players? Have you identified quality players, and then are they on the right trajectory to be able to contribute at the men's national team level? I can't really answer that question at this stage. Would rather talk about that after their tournament run is done. But certainly, I mean, there should be some levels of excitement about some of these players. But again, like, this is a moment where the hyped kids really have to step up and show why that they've been so celebrated. I mean, Exhibit A is the captain right now. Gio Reyna is an undoubtedly talented kid. He's a phenom. He's individually very very gifted, but he didn't really lead his squad well. He went missing for long periods. He wasn't clean with the ball, and at the end of the game, he gets a pure frustration yellow card, for dissent on a foul call. So I look at him, and that's a great example of somebody who we would expect is on that trajectory, but it's time for him to show something in these pressure moments.
And you talk about trajectory, and I think tonight is a perfect metric, right? Because one of the things that we talked about on this podcast last week was that this is one of the most professional sides where almost all of these players have a tremendous amount of professional experience before even coming in to this U17 World Cup. What are you looking for from them to show that they respond like professionals this evening against Japan?
Yeah, I mean, let's look for some consistency and some coherence over the 90 minutes. And it's not just about executing the game plan. It's also about maintaining a focus and a commitment for the 90 minutes, win, lose, or draw. I think what was disappointing in the Senegal match was that heads went down. Important mental mistakes were made in important moments, and it made the game look uglier than it should have been on the scoreboard down the stretch. But again, it's an area where American players have traditionally struggled. seizing moments, recognizing moments, understanding where a game can be won or lost, regardless of maybe what the run of play has looked like outside of those moments. So I hope to see a collective consistency and rigidity, but also some individuals step up and try and make some of those moments rather than be victims of them.
Well, the U.S. plays Japan tonight at 7:50 Eastern on FS2 and closes out the group stage against the Dutch on November 2nd. That match also on Fox Sports 2. And of course, we will have reports on each match on SoccerWire.com. We're going to step aside and hear from our presenting sponsor, PlayerMaker. And when we return, our awesome producer, Bridget Baker, will get us up to date with this week's college commitment tracker. The SoccerWire podcast is brought to you by PlayerMaker, the ultimate performance product for soccer teams and players. PlayerMaker is already being used by the world's top Premier League clubs, championship college teams, and now available for the youth market on a subscription basis. The PlayerMaker system records every touch of the ball and every step, providing information for coaches and players such as total touches on the ball, right and left foot touches, possession times, distance covered, sprints, and passing completion, among many others. PlayerMaker data can help coaches at every level to plan their training sessions effectively. Every player receives feedback on their personal technical and physical training goals. For a demo of PlayerMaker, visit SoccerWire.com/PlayerMaker. PlayerMaker, fast track player development. Welcome back to the weekly SoccerWire podcast. I'm joined now by producer and editor extraordinaire, Bridget Baker, who is here to tell us all about the most up-to-date college commitments.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, we're going to start with the 2020 class as we have been. Rachel Fishkin, a goalkeeper for Weston FC, will be going to the University of North Florida. Midfielder Erica Moline from Salvo Soccer Club will be going to Illinois State. Amanda Martino, defender for PDA, is off to Farley Dickinson, while midfielder Isabella Pruss from Sporting Kansas City will be headed to UMKC, and Kayla Williams, a forward from Elite Girls Academy, will be going to Jacksonville. Moving right along to the 2021 class, Taylor Gardner, a forward from PDA, will be going to Marist College. Goalkeeper Nina Zwolinski from FSA United is headed to the local American University. Midfielder Jenna Stayert from Eclipse Select Illinois will be heading to Tennessee. Kennedy Hart of IMG Academy is a midfielder who will be going to Rice, and defender Kalia Gathright from SoCal Blues will be off to Washington State.
Thank you, Bridget, and congratulations to everyone who is taking the next step on their soccer journeys. I'm joined once again by Quinn Casteel. Quinn, first of all, happy Halloween. You dressing as anything tomorrow?
I'm not. I think I'm scary looking enough, Mark.
Oh, Quinn, I very much disagree. Bridget, though, she might agree with you the way she's laughing.
Yep.
Bridget, are you going as anything?
No, but my dog Cash is going to be a taco, and I can't even tell you how excited I am for all the pictures from that.
It's a shame that this is just an audio podcast because Cash is super cute, and he's going to look even better as a taco. All right, Quinn, back to you. Once you've collected all your candy, what stories will SoccerWire be chasing in November?
November's a big month, Mark, for youth soccer. You know, with this month in October, it's been a lot of pro news on our site, you know, focusing on the top of the pyramid with Major League Soccer playoffs, National Women's Soccer League Championship just wrapped up. But November is when youth soccer really heats up with college showcase season. We have National Letter of Intent signing day coming up November 13th, and just some really big events, national soccer events coming up in the month. Just to mention a few, we have the U.S. Soccer Development Academy West Regional Showcase this weekend. We have ECNL Phoenix. That's a big fall showcase that they hold every year out in Arizona coming up next week. The USU Soccer National League gets started at the tail end of this month with the girls playing their first event. And then other just major youth soccer tournaments all around the country. One of the biggest ones is a Thanksgiving tournament in this area, the Bethesda Premier Cup. So there's just a lot going on. This is a really big time of year for college showcase season.
I always remember you had Thanksgiving, but, I always had one eye on the weekend because I knew I was going into tournaments where there were going to be a lot of college scouts. And, it's super interesting. There are so many tournaments, Quinn. You wonder how college coaches decide when and where to go places and how they divvy that up amongst their staff.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you'll have, a lot of programs will send one assistant coach to one event, and, the head coach or, various members of the staff will, be all over the place on a given weekend. Some coaches will even go from one event on one day and then make a 5, 6, 7-hour drive to another event for the next day. And they're just watching, players for, usually they'll watch, some recruits for half a game, and then immediately they're on to the next field. So, yeah, it's a very busy time for recruiting.
Well, the coaches will be there, and so will SoccerWire, as we want to thank everyone for tuning in and continue to encourage you to share, like, and subscribe to our podcast, as well as reaching out to us on email at news@soccerwire.com with news tips, comments, and your own college commitment news. I'm Mark Serber, and for coverage of everything youth soccer, be sure to check SoccerWire.com, your premier location for the best coverage of the youth game. If there's something we missed or a topic you would like discussed, hit us up on Twitter at @TheSoccerWire, or hop over to SoccerWire.com and click on the Contact Us link on the bottom of any page. Every Thursday, we put out our National Soccer Recruiting and Tournament Wire, especially for this month of November. And for those of you in the Mid-Atlantic or Tri-State regions, we send twice weekly local news roundups. Just click on the newsletter link on SoccerWire.com to get the best of SoccerWire in your inbox. That will do it for this edition of the SoccerWire podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. For Quinn Casteel, Charles Boehm, and our producer, Bridget Baker, I'm Mark Serber saying thank you for joining us on the SoccerWire podcast.